Lowe's knows that no matter your paint project, saving is at the top of your list. That's why when you shop today, you can buy one, get one free select Valspar and HGTV Home by Sherwin-Williams one-coat coverage interior paints via rebate. Shop these deals in-store or online today at Lowe's. We help, you save. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. Offer valid 8/21 through 9/3.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, whatever time it may be when you listen to this. If you listen to this, we're going to do something a little different here. When I first started this podcast for Victory Bible, set it up so I could record Mike, myself, Johnny, anybody else that comes and preaches at our church, get the sermons from Sunday morning, get the sermons from Wednesday night, put them out there so if somebody wanted to stream them and hear them, they're available. And I also put, when I was first kind of playing around with it and seeing how it worked and tested it out, I did two little short devotionals. And this one, I guess you can blame Christy from church because they were unable to be in Sunday school this past Sunday. And she asked me if I happened to record Sunday school to do for the podcast, and I told her I didn't, and she, had said she missed it because she really needed her notes. And I thought about, well, maybe I can record Sunday school now and put that on there too, but I am tentative because I thought I don't want to give people a reason. We're trying to get people to want to come to Sunday school. Don't miss out on Sunday school. And not just especially not at Victory Bible because I'm the teacher and if you miss out, you're not really missing much. But in general, don't, as an adult, look at Sunday school as something you think, oh, well, that's a kid's thing. That's like teaching. That's a babies. And Sunday school is important. And I think we learn a lot, and I don't know how each Sunday school does. I've been to churches that have materials, and I'm not down in materials that come from the Bible bookstore, but it's got, the thing, and they go through the thing, and it's a lesson and whatnot. I kind of go through my version of Sunday school, how I've been in Sunday school as a saved adult, and how I feel most comfortable is picking a book of the Bible and going through it verse by verse and just kind of doing a Bible study of that book until we get to the end of it and go into the next one. That's kind of how I do things. Everybody does it different, but there's a lot that can be learned. And in mine, and it's because it's not mine, it's not my Sunday school class. I don't own it. It's God's class. It's God's church. If you come to hear me, you come for the wrong reason. You need to come to learn, get closer to God. But it's not about me. It's about all of us. So mine are the type where it's, hey, anybody got any comments? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? We have discussion because I don't know it all. And I learn a lot in Sunday school as the teacher from listening to everybody else and their points of view. I'm just there to kind of guide the class around, I guess, like the tour guide. Here's the information. What do y'all see? So that's how I teach Sunday school. But anyway, long story short, go to Sunday school. Back to the point of Christy asking about Sunday school, and I thought, yeah, I could easily record Sunday school and put it on the podcast too for people to listen to. But I want you to come to Sunday school. But I also think Bible study is important, so let me do a Bible study and put on the podcast. Similar to how I do Sunday school, only I don't have an audience here with me to say, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? By all means, I would love if you text me, email me, comment on whatever platform you are. Some of these have places where you can comment your responses or what. I would like to see what other people think because I need to learn too. I need to be closer. I can always learn. I learn something new pretty much every time I read a scripture. I could read it 100 times and on 101 learn something new. All that said, I am going to attempt to do a podcast version of a Bible study / Sunday school style study thing. And I'm going to go to the Book of Ruth. Couple of reasons. One reason, or the main reason, I guess, would really be because Ruth is one of my favorite books of the Bible. If you've been around me or heard me speak much about the Book of Ruth, you'll quickly learn that to me, the Book of Ruth is not so much the main point I take from it is not the life of Ruth, who the book's named after, who is the main character, but I get the most from the life of Naomi, the, I guess, second in line type character in the Book of Ruth. And I learn a lot from her story, and I think we can all learn a lot from her story. In fact, and I wouldn't even call it a book because it's like 40, 45, 50 pages long. It's short, but if you wanted to read, I think it probably cost you more to get the thing shipped to you than it does to buy. If you go on Amazon.com, search my name, Jeremy Mallett, or the book Being Naomi, several years ago, not long after my grandmother, Betty Akins, passed away, I had preached at her funeral from the Book of Ruth and thought of how she is, because honestly, the Book of Ruth, Naomi's the one that sticks out to me. Mama was my Naomi. She was a Naomi in my life, and I think we're all called to live a life like Naomi in front of Ruths that come into our lives. And Mama really was a Naomi in my life. If you're interested in that book, like I said, it's like $4 or so. Probably cost you more to get it shipped to you, unless you got Amazon Prime, and then I guess it's free. Probably costs more than shipped to you than it does to buy it. It's short. You can read it in one day. It's nothing special. I'm not getting nothing off this. That's just the price. That's the cheapest Amazon would let me sell it so they can make money off of it. I don't think I'm on any Amazon streaming platforms. If I am, I may have just got us kicked off of it, Mike. But anyway, it's there if you would like to read about Ruth and Naomi further in there and some of my thoughts on what it means to be a Naomi and get a little insight on my grandmother and the testimony she left before me. There's just a lot to learn in Ruth, to say a lot. So anyway, let's go through. We're going to start today, and this will be our first attempt at the podcast or the Bible study of Ruth. And actually, I'm just going to go through Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. If you haven't heard me before, you think chapter 1, verse 1, okay, there's about 30 seconds left in this, but Jeremy likes to dig way too deep sometimes into things. I'm going to read this verse, break down some things for you, and then after this, I'll end, and hopefully about once a week, I'll post one of these to our podcast. I'll share it on Facebook, so y'all that go to church with me or friends with me or listen to whatever, you can see on Facebook when it's available. If you subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or what's the other one? Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. I think it gives you a notification if you set up notifications for it to let you know when it's available. But anyway, I'm going to try to do this about once a week. So let me read Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, and go through a few thoughts that I have. Okay, reading in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judea, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons." Straightforward, simple verse, but there's a lot of history and a lot of things that we can learn about the setting that this took place in, the people that are involved in this story, and apply it to us today. So let's start with, there it says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled." Now the book of Ruth, if you look in the Old Testament, comes directly after the book of Judges. So there's no king of Israel yet. They had judges that ruled, numbers of judges, several judges. Samson was one, Deborah was one, Gideon was one. You go through all these different ones. But if you read the book of Judges, one thing you'll notice that happens with the Israelites is They'll do good for a period of time. They'll follow God. They'll do good. They'll have a good judge. Then they'll fall back. They'll do bad. They'll have a bad judge. They stray away from God. A good judge comes along. They kind of get back. And I'm not talking like a legal judge. I'm talking about the leader. He's not the king, but he's the one kind of leading Israel at the time. So they have a good one. They do good. They have a bad one. They do bad. Good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. They go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In fact, several different places in the book of Judges says that they did what was right in their own eyes. We can apply that to us. We can apply that to our nation, our leaders in our nation, but we can apply that directly. Bring it on home to our own household, to us individually. How many times, instead of seeking God, do we do what's right in our own eyes? Oh, me. Elimelech here has the same issue. Okay, so we're looking at Ruth being written during the time of the judges, during a time of where everybody did what was right in their own eyes. Well, what does it say in verse 1 happens? It says there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judea, doesn't say his name yet, but his name is Elimelech. A man of Bethlehem, Judea, went to sojourn in a country of Moab, which is an ungodly country. It had its own gods. It was not part of Israel. It was not part of the promise. It was not part of the covenant. It was a pagan nation. So he left Israel to go to a pagan nation because his country was having a famine. And he took him and he took his wife, who was Naomi. He took his 2 sons, who I'll butcher their names, but they were Mahlon and Chilion. If I say those right, that's how I'm going to say them. And he leads his country. So I question that myself. Did Elimelech seek God before he decided to leave? Or did he choose, like we do a lot of time? Here's the problem. There's famine in the land. Instead of facing it, seeking God through the problem, let's run from the problem. David is an example to me of trusting God through the problem, not only through the problem, but going directly headlong into the problem. What do you mean, Jeremy? Read the story of David and Goliath. It says he ran toward Goliath, not from him. He didn't cower down. He didn't try to bait him in to his advantage where he could get the sling and hit him with the rock a little bit better. He ran at the problem. But too many times I'm like Elimelech, here's the problem, or here's my giant, and rather than facing it with the faith and confidence in God, which we're called to do, we run from it. As a matter of fact, you'll get over into the New Testament, and Paul writes of the full armor of God, and he talks about there's a helmet of salvation to protect your head, and a breastplate of righteousness, and to have your feet shod, and your loins girded up, and all these things. And he talks about all these different pieces of the armor of God, but there's one piece that doesn't exist, and it's a backplate, because we're never intended to run away from trouble, because trouble and problems and giants and famines and sicknesses and death and all of these things are going to come. Jesus himself told us we're going to go through trials and tribulations. We're not meant to run from them. So I question, when I read verse 1 and on through, I wonder, did Elimelech take time to seek God and say, hey, God, I'm in your land. Am I going to trust you, or am I going to leave your land and go and run away from this problem seeking something somewhere else? How many times do we have the problem, but we run somewhere else seeking, we think the grass is going to be greener over there, or there's an answer over there, but we run and leave to it. It also leaves me with a question I thought about. Had Elimelech sought God? And it doesn't say, so this is just Jeremy's opinion. But had he sought God and looked for this answer, and God said, yes, there's a famine in the land, but you stay where you are. You're one of mine. The Bible says he's never seen the righteous forsaken or begging for bread. You're one of mine. I'm not going to let you starve and die because you stay and follow and do what is right in my eyes. If Elimelech had prayed that prayer and sought out God and the answer was stay, face the famine, stay where you're at, how would his life be different? How would my life be different if there was things that I had sought God before I made up my mind to do it Jeremy's way? There's a lot of spiritual and emotional and internal and whatever you want to label them, scars in life that I carry around because of the decisions and choices Jeremy's made without consulting God. Who knows what would have happened? I don't think we would have had Ruth. This story would have been different because Ruth was a Moabite, so the son that she married wouldn't have met him if they hadn't went. But also, it just makes me think, what would have happened? Would Elimelech and his two sons die, or would they have stayed alive? Would they still be alive through all this? A lot of things that could be different depending on if we listen to God and follow God, or we trust to our own thoughts and our own understanding. I think it's in Proverbs where it says, or Psalms, one of them, lean not unto your own understanding, because we don't see things. And I've used this, overuse it 5 million times probably. I've used this example of how we see life versus how God sees life. I see life as a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And in my 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle of the life of Jeremy, I currently see about 5 pieces of the puzzle. And of those 5 pieces, none of them are corner pieces, which are easy to place. And 2 or 3 of them is probably flipped upside down, so all I see is the cardboard back of it. But God sees all 5,000 pieces at once, and He sees them in their place as a finished puzzle. He's got the puzzle finished. I have just a few pieces and don't even have a clue where they go, and some of them are upside down, but I'm going to trust my way. Shame on Jeremy. But we all do that. So I think there's a lot to learn in just the first verse, but in the book of Ruth too, about putting our trust, fully trusting in God. A second thing I want to point out is where he was from. And then we're going to go from where he went to. Okay, the Bible says that the certain man, who is Elimelech, was of Bethlehem, Judea, or Judah, Bethlehem, Judah. Well, the word Bethlehem, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce these two words in Greek, in Hebrew, but it's 2 base words, but put together, the Hebrew meaning of the word Bethlehem is house of bread. We're in God's house. We're God's people in God's land, in the house of bread. Yes, there's a famine in the land, but I'm going to leave the house of bread. That's like I've got a cupboard and it's full of canned foods and vegetables, and I've got fresh meat in the fridge and bread and beans and bologna, and I've got all the food at home. But I'm going to run to the grocery store that's closed at 2 in the morning to try to get something to eat. That's how I take that. I think it's important or symbolic, so to say, that Bethlehem meant house of bread. And even though there was a famine, Elimelech and his family, they chose to flee the house of bread looking for something else. Now let's look at where they went. They went to Moab. Moab is a pagan country. It doesn't believe in the true God. It has its own beliefs. It has its own rituals. And maybe there was tons of food there and he knew it. Maybe somebody said, yo, dude, there's no food in Israel, or Bethlehem, which is in Israel. There's no food here, but there's tons of food over in Moab. So he makes the choice to go to Moab. I find this interesting. To get from Bethlehem to Moab, Elimelech and his family would have to go through Jericho. Well, now Jericho is important because Jericho, when Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land, into the house of bread, the promised land from God, they defeated Jericho. That was the first conquest they had when they crossed over the Jordan River. So he had to go back through Jericho. Once he gets through Jericho, they would have had to gone through the Judean wilderness near the Red Sea. What did the Israelites do with Moses? They wandered the wilderness for 40 years. After that, what would he have to have done to get to Moab? Cross back over the Jordan River, which is the same river that Joshua and the men crossed over to get to the Promised Land. So in essence, to go from Bethlehem, the house of bread, even though it's in famine, to Moab, I'm going to call godless country, even though it had its own gods, its pagan gods. He had to backtrack. He had to go backwards. He had to kind of undo everything that had been done to get to the Promised Land. How many times in our life do we go backwards thinking that we'll find something better or what we want in the other direction? The problem here is big, so I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to go back the way. I'm going to turn back. And we saw it, or you see it if you read Exodus. It's not anything new to the Israelites. It's not anything new today. They kept looking at Moses and was like, hey, we're hungry. Wasn't there enough graves in Egypt? Why do we have to come out here in the wilderness to die? Hey, we're thirsty. Wasn't there enough graves in Egypt? They were looking back to Egypt. It took them. It took God one night to get them out of Egypt. It took them 40 years of wandering around in the wilderness to get Egypt out of them so he could get them into the Promised Land. There's dangers in looking back. It's important to look back and remember who we were so we don't forget where we came from. That's very important, because too often if we forget where we came from, then the next step is we start looking down on others. Well, they're not worthy. They're sorry. I'm not going to help them. I was them once. I remember my past, but I don't lust and long after my past, because I remember how destructive it was to me spiritually. I'll tell you right now, if I were still living, been married 20 years now, if I were still living the same as I was before I was saved, I probably wouldn't. Most likely, 99.9% sure, I probably wouldn't still be married. Probably wouldn't have much to do with my kids. May or may not be in jail if I'm still alive and not dead. Because things in my past were ugly and bad, but God delivered me from those things. Why would I want to go back to them? But how many times do we want to go back? Do we want to go back? Do we find ourselves turning because things look hard where we are? Well, we're not promised an easy path. We're promised trials and tribulations, as a matter of fact. But as Paul says, and I love this, and I say this a lot when I teach or preach, you read all of Paul's different writings, and he keeps on saying, he that endures to the end, he that endures to the end, he that endures to the end. Life's not an easy walk, but there is something much better at the end of it if we will keep our focus on God, face our giants, face our problems with God, because without him, we can't do anything. Paul wrote, I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me. Because without him, I'm nothing. I'm going to get destroyed. If I try to face the devil as Jeremy, I'm going to get ripped to pieces. Because he's stronger than me. He's smarter than me. He's slyer than me. He's everything better than me. But he's not better than Jesus. So if I go to him and I fight with the Lord, or better yet, the battle's not mine. The Bible says that too. I'll let the Lord fight my battle, and I put my faith and trust fully in him and continue to look forward even when things look dark and bleak. It's going to end out. The end is going to be much better than what I have to go through to get to the end. Let's just leave it at that. But I thought it was interesting. Bethlehem, the house of bread. We left it to go to Moab, and to get to Moab, we had to pretty much backtrack and undo everything we did. Now, there's another word in here in the first verse I want to look at. It says that when he left Bethlehem, Judah, he went to sojourn in the country of Moab. Now, if you look up the word sojourn, that's not a common word we use today. But when you sojourn, it's a temporary stay. It wasn't meant to be forever. He didn't leave Bethlehem, going to Moab with the intent of staying there forever. Yet we find he died in Moab. Okay? We're not promised. We go out into sin, okay? Sometimes we go out seeking something and we end up staying longer than we intend. And the thing about it is we're all going to face a physical death. We just don't know when it is. Don't get caught in the wrong land when it's your time to stand before God. He that endures to the end. A tree's going to be found in the direction it falls, right? If I fall to the right, I'm going to be found laying on my right. There's problems when we intend to sojourn or we intend to step out in sin as a temporary stay. Oh, it's not hurting. I'll get back. I'll fix this. I'll get back closer when it's not meant to be forever. But there's the old saying, sin will take you further than you want to go and keep you there longer than you want to stay. And we also know that when sin's finished, it bringeth forth death. And after death, there's the judgment. And there's the depart from me, I never knew you, or there's the welcome in, my good and faithful servant. There's no in between. We've talked before about you can't serve both. Jesus' own words, you can't serve God and mammon. You can't live on both sides of the fence. I've told the story, and Mike loves to hear he's told it a couple times, and I think he loves the story too, of the guy who there was the land on one side that was owned by Satan, the land on one side that was owned by God, and he was told, it's time to make a choice. He sat on the fence. Well, he's sitting on the fence, and here comes Satan. He says, come on, go with me. And he's like, I didn't choose your land. I'm sitting on the fence, brother. I haven't made my choice. I didn't choose you or God. I'm still waiting. I've got time. I'm on the fence. And Satan looks at him with a little sly grin. I can see it. He's like, yeah, I own this land, but see, you don't realize I own the fence too. We can't sit on the fence. We can't live Monday through Saturday with one foot in the world and Sunday with one foot in the church and think that that's pleasing unto the eyes of God. We can't do that. Okay? So, it's a temporary stay that he intended to go, but once he gets there, it drags him and it holds him there. And that's how life is with us, and that's how sin will get us. Sin, we don't just go from living at the foot of the cross to being, neck deep in sin in the blink of it. We could, but it's gradual. And I want to look at, and I'll finish with this, and we will, next podcast that I do for the Book of Ruth, we'll start in verse 2 and see if we get through a whole verse or more verses. But I want to leave with this, and it comes from Psalm 1:1. And I look at it a little different than how it's written, but there's a progression you see in the words used in Psalm 1, verse 1. And I'm going to read it. I'm going to tell you what the progression is and the dangers of it, and leave you with that warning of don't play around with sin. Don't go in thinking, I'm just going to do it. It's a temporary stay. It's not hurting anybody. I'm not going to live like this forever. Let me read Psalm 1:1. It says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. There's 3 words in here in order that tell a progression of how we get sucked in to sin and we get comfortable. And before long, we look around and we realize we can't see the Lord anymore because He hasn't left us, but we've walked so far away from Him, we can't see Him anymore. We're out in the middle of disaster or sin. We're just out on an island. And let me tell you this too, Satan's not your friend, so once he gets you out there and alone and lost, he's going to leave you. But let's look at these 3 words. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. We start walking. We're walking out there, hey, I'm just going to dip my toe over in, whatever on Saturday night, but I'll go back to church tomorrow morning, make things right, ask for forgiveness, blah, 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 whatever we do. But we're walking. And then it gets down to the next word of standeth. Okay, we can go from walking in it and then going back to church. We're just walking. Hey, we're not hand in hand with sin. We hadn't set up our camp, so to say, over here yet. But before long, we realized we've quit walking and we're just standing here. We're not getting further from God. We're not getting closer to God, but we're just standing right in the middle of all this, looking around, and the temptation's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and harder for us to fight off because we have separated ourselves from God, because the Bible says sin separates us from God. So we've walked in it, we've stood in it, and then we get to the dangerous part where at the end it says, sitteth in the seat of the scornful. We've walked around, we've looked around, we've stood, now we've got comfortable and we've sat down. We've sat down and we're no longer moving. We're in that place that we don't need to be anymore. And the only way to get back to God, because like I said, He never leaves us, we leave Him, but He never leaves us. So if you're away from God today, guess where He's at? He's right where you left Him. How do you get that back? Well, first, you're sitting, so you got to stand up, then you got to walk back toward Him. So that is my devotion, lesson, whatever you want to call this thing for today. Book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 1. We will try to add to this at least once a week or so and go through the Book of Ruth, see how this is. Like I said with this podcast, and like I say with the videos I've done on YouTube and little book things or whatever, pamphlets, whatever I've wrote. I don't know if anybody reads them, looks at them, sees them or not, but God's told me to do this, so I'm going to do it because I can't stand up and preach. That Mary told them at the wedding supper, just do whatever Jesus says. I can't preach to other people, hey, just do what God tells you to do if I'm not going to do what God tells me to do. That makes me a hypocrite. How can I tell you what to do if I don't even do what I'm supposed to do? So I'm doing what I feel led to do. Hope that meant something to somebody. Hope that's a blessing. Again, this is not a Jeremy podcast. This is Victory Bible Church. We're located 140 Saratoga Street, Albertville, Alabama. We'll have Sunday school at 10 o'clock. Worship service starts at 11, Wednesday nights at 6:30. You can find us locally on WBSA 93.5 FM every second Sunday at 7 a.m. for the radio broadcast. Like, share, get notifications on these podcasts because they'll come out. Christy usually films the whole service on Sundays and Wednesdays and puts up on YouTube and shares on her Facebook, and then all of us kind of just share it out. If you don't know who Christy is, hit me up and I'll tell you how to see it, or we'll if you want gospel, if you want more, message me in some way, shape, or form on Facebook, Jeremy Mallett. You can send me an email, jeremymallett@gmail.com. I'm not putting my phone number out on the internet because that's just going to be a disaster. I have a feeling if I did that. But if you know it, text me, whatever. I'll point you to some. I'll point you to some gospel. Now, when God tells you what to do or He puts conviction on the heart, that's between you and Him. Don't get mad at me if it steps on your toes. But I'll point you to it till you're blue in the face or sick of it or whatever the saying is. But I hope this meant something to somebody. And I will study up, see if we get through a couple more verses of Ruth, hopefully next week. But if not, just keep watching. Tonight, if you're listening to this the day I did it, today's Monday, it's Labor Day, but I'm going to put Wednesday night's service up so you can hear the preaching. Follow our podcast on these platforms. Share them with your friends. And I believe that's important because Paul said if our gospel be hid, it's hid from them that are lost. So if we're not sharing it with them, who is? Love you all. Praying for y'all. Pray for me. I could always use prayers, and I could always get closer myself. So we will see you next go round.